For decades, people who have had near-death experiences reported the same details, floating above their bodies, seeing their entire life flash before them, and sometimes even encountering mysterious figures or otherworldly landscapes. But what if these weren't just personal hallucinations? What if powerful intelligence agencies, including the CIA, had been secretly studying these experiences for their own purposes? Released documents suggest that the US government has been deeply invested in understanding what happens at the moment of death. Why? Because if near-death experiences, or NDEs, reveal something real about consciousness, the afterlife, or even hidden aspects of human perception, then whoever understands them first might hold a kind of power that goes beyond life itself. And it turns out, the CIA has been quietly conducting experiments, gathering data, and even funding studies into the strange realm of near-death states. What did they find? Why were they so interested? And what connections between the mind and death did they uncover that the public was never meant to know? This is the hidden link between the CIA and near-death experiences, one that has been buried for decades but is now impossible to ignore. Now let's look at some of those experiments and see what they found. 1. The top-secret program that studied consciousness beyond death. In the 1970s, the CIA launched a classified initiative to explore altered states of consciousness. At first, it seemed like just another branch of their infamous MK-Ultra mind control experiments. But deeper investigation reveals something even more disturbing. They weren't just studying how to manipulate the human mind. They were looking into what happens when it stops functioning altogether. Using subjects who had survived clinical death, researchers documented how people described leaving their bodies, traveling through tunnels of light, and accessing knowledge beyond human comprehension. The most chilling part? Many of these individuals, despite having been unconscious with no brain activity, returned with detailed descriptions of events that occurred while they were clinically dead. Events they should not have been able to witness. Why would the CIA care? Because if consciousness exists separately from the brain, that means it can be controlled, influenced, or even weaponized. If a person's mind can survive beyond death, could intelligence agencies learn to manipulate that process? Was it possible to extract information from people who were clinically deceased and then bring them back? These were the kinds of questions that fueled some of the most secretive research projects of the time. 2. The mysterious death simulations conducted in underground labs. What if near-death experiences weren't just studied but were also induced under controlled conditions? Whistleblowers have come forward claiming that the CIA was involved in experiments where subjects were deliberately brought to the brink of death and then revived, all while monitoring their experiences in extreme detail. These alleged tests involved cutting off oxygen to the brain, triggering cardiac arrest, or using high doses of anesthetics to mimic the exact state of clinical death. Participants would later describe the same strange occurrences as natural NDEs, encounters with unknown entities, visions of their past, and most disturbingly, a sense that something had been waiting for them on the other side. Why go to such extreme lengths? Some believe that intelligence agencies were trying to understand whether the human soul or consciousness could be harnessed in ways beyond our understanding. Could a person trained to control their near-death state learn to access hidden knowledge? Could a soldier trained in these techniques become immune to fear, even death itself? These were the dangerous ideas being tested behind locked doors, far from public scrutiny. 3. The link between NDEs and remote viewing, accessing the other side. One of the most bizarre discoveries linked to near-death experiences is their strange connection to remote viewing, the supposed ability to perceive distant places, events, or even people without physically being there. In the 1980s, the CIA's STARGATE project explored this phenomenon, training operatives to gather intelligence using only their minds. But here's where it gets even stranger. Some of the most successful remote viewers were individuals who had previously had near-death experiences. The reason? Many claimed that during their brief time outside of their physical bodies, they had learned how to detach their consciousness at will. This led some researchers to suspect that NDEs weren't just about the afterlife, but were evidence of an untapped human ability, the ability to perceive reality from outside the body. If intelligence agencies could harness this skill, it would mean spies who could observe secret locations without ever stepping foot inside. It would mean military intelligence that required no satellites, no technology, just pure mental capability. 4. The CIA's hidden influence on university research into NDEs. Publicly, universities have been studying near-death experiences for decades, but what's rarely mentioned is who funds many of these studies. A closer look reveals a trail of research grants and secret investments that trace directly back to government agencies, including the CIA. Why would they care about university research? Because scientific institutions provide the perfect cover for intelligence agencies to gather knowledge without attracting attention. If a respected scientist announces a major discovery about NDEs, no one suspects that intelligence agencies might be pulling the strings behind the scenes. One of the biggest questions driving this research is whether NDEs provide access to information beyond normal human perception. If people return from death with knowledge they could not have otherwise known, whether it be about the future, distant events, or even classified material, then near-death experiences could represent a major security risk. Could a dying person access secrets that were meant to stay hidden? Could a revived individual return with knowledge they were never supposed to have? These questions remain unanswered, but the interest from intelligence agencies suggests they believe it's possible. 5. The Heaven's Backdoor Experiment, the CIA's secret death simulation program. One of the most classified and disturbing CIA experiments on near-death experiences involved the creation of synthetic death simulations, a program codenamed Project X-89. In the late 1980s, the agency reportedly funded research that sought to replicate the effects of NDEs using artificial means. Test subjects, many of whom were recruited from covert military units and intelligence divisions, were placed into medically induced near-death states under controlled conditions. Their brains were scanned with classified neuroimaging technology to analyze what happened as they crossed the threshold between life and death. Some described encountering unknown entities, others reported seeing future events with stunning accuracy. The most alarming result? Some subjects who were revived could no longer perceive time the same way. They claimed to see beyond the present moment, anticipating events before they happened. Intelligence officers reportedly attempted to weaponize this phenomenon, using NDE survivors for covert predictive intelligence. The results? Buried in classified archives, never to be seen by the public. 6. Project Spectre, the CIA's study on NDE-induced remote viewing. Declassified documents from the CIA's STARGATE project revealed that the agency believed near-death experiences might unlock an advanced form of remote viewing, the ability to perceive distant locations and events without physical presence. This theory led to Project Spectre, a secret operation investigating whether NDEs could enhance the ability to see classified information beyond ordinary human perception. In these experiments, subjects who had survived NDEs were placed in sensory isolation tanks and asked to describe highly secure government facilities they had never visited. Shockingly, some of them provided blueprint-level details of military bases they should not have known existed. The results? Several reports suggested that NDE survivors displayed remote viewing abilities far beyond ordinary trained psychics. This led to serious ethical concerns within the agency. If a person could access intelligence beyond normal means, could foreign governments be using similar techniques? The project's findings were eventually classified, and the CIA denied its existence, but leaked documents suggest otherwise. 7. The Light Tunnel Experiment, the CIA's attempt to replicate the afterlife. One of the most bizarre and highly classified CIA operations was a psychological experiment aimed at reproducing the light at the end of the tunnel phenomenon reported in NDEs. The agency sought to determine if the tunnel was purely a brain-generated hallucination or a gateway to another realm. Using advanced optical and neural stimulation technology, test subjects were exposed to controlled bursts of high-frequency electromagnetic waves, designed to mimic the neurological patterns observed in people who had near-death experiences. The goal? To see if artificial NDEs could trigger the same afterlife-like visions. The results were unexpected. Some participants described being pulled toward an unknown force, encountering strange figures or hearing voices that claimed to reveal hidden knowledge. Others claimed that once they saw the light, they felt as though they had left their physical body and entered a space they could not explain in human terms. The experiment was shut down without explanation, with several key researchers suddenly resigning from their positions. 8. The CIA's classified study on NDEs and precognition. A little-known report from a CIA-funded research facility in California suggests that NDE survivors might possess precognitive abilities, knowledge of future events before they happen. This controversial theory emerged after multiple test subjects who had been revived after clinical death predicted real-world events with stunning accuracy. One participant, a former intelligence officer who had a near-death experience following a heart attack, predicted an assassination attempt on a US political figure weeks before it happened. Another survivor described a catastrophic airline disaster, which unfolded almost exactly as they had envisioned. The agency quickly classified this research and moved to discredit any public discussion of it. Why? Because if NDEs truly granted glimpses into the future, it would suggest that time does not function the way we assume, and that knowledge of future events could be accessed under the right conditions. If you have made it this far, comment down below with the word 100% to confirm that you have received the knowledge from this video. For more interesting topics, make sure you watch the recommended video that you see on the screen right now. Thanks for watching.